They say you cannot break an ugly stick. Apparently you can. Not me, somebody else. We're gonna fix it. Now, every single rod tutorial that I have seen so far on how to fix a busted fishing rod, they always do two things, one of two things. They either tell you, how do you fix the tip on this one is fine, it's also pure fiberglass, trademark. Or they tell you how to join the two rod ends that are broken on a one-piece rod. Here's the funny thing about this is a two-piece rod. Now, the most significant difference in a break between a one-piece rod and a two-piece rod is that in a one-piece rod, if it's a relatively clean break, you can generally fit the two ends together and they're gonna line up, same size, same break pattern and everything. But on a two-piece rod, if it's a clean break at the point, the ferrule where it connects, now you've got a problem. Because whatever material you're gonna use to fill in that circle right there, that little hollowed point of the rod blank, it's not gonna match the other end. See, here's what happened. Now, I think we can all agree it takes a rather special person or a really special fish to break a classic ugly stick rod. So here's my theory on how this happened. I think someone joined the rod together without connecting the ferrules all the way. I think they probably inserted it about half or a third of the way, didn't hook up on a fish. I think they caught a snag and they thought, okay, I'm gonna pull it free from this snag. They probably high sticked the rod, which is where you point your rod straight up. Fishing rods are not meant to take that kind of pressure. When you're pulling down or you're pulling up from a heavy object, whether it's a fish or a snag, you never want to bend the rod in an arc where the pressure is coming straight down. See, I can do this all day long on an ugly stick or a really high quality jigging rod. This rod's gonna be just fine. But if I apply pressure from a vertical position going down, I can snap this rod between two fingers. And I think that's exactly what happened. The problem is it happened right there. So you can see, top half the rod, bottom half the rod. The diameters are completely different because this one was meant to fit inside of this one. But because this one broke off too close to the base, it is now too big. See, there should be another about 2 inches worth of rod here, and that is gone. So now I can't connect these together in the way they were meant to be connected. I also can't connect them in a traditional manner because the material I fill this end of the rod with is not going to be big enough to fit in this one. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to follow the traditional tutorial steps to fixing a busted rod about 75–80% of the way. Then we're going to have to improvise a little bit. So this is an experiment. Now, being a biologist, being a scientist, I love experiments, but as you well know, they do not always work out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our two rod ends, put them over here. Let me show you today's materials for our experiment. I've got some medical tape. We may or may not use that. Electrician's tape. I think we're definitely going to end up using that. A couple, I know some of you guys who are experienced in fishing rods or fixing fishing rods, you're going to cringe when I show you this, but bear with me. A couple of nails, you know where I'm going with this. Some hacksaw blades, and let's not forget the rest of the hacksaw. A marker, 2 different types of super glue, quick dry gel, quick dry liquid, scissors, a lighter, sandpaper, and shrink tubing. And if all else fails, what can't you fix with a little bit of duct tape? All right, let me show you the theory behind how we're going to use these tools today. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our fishing rod here and one of these nails. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert the nail into the blank of the fishing rod. Now, really quick, let me just point something out. The diameter of this nail and this rod match almost perfectly. Now, before I even go any further, let me explain something. There are many different ways you can do this. Many different ways. Some work better than others for different applications. A lot of that depends upon your materials, your rod, the application for which you intend to use the rod, and personal preference. So, a lot of people are going to say, if you put a piece of metal inside the blank of your rod, 2 things might happen. Number 1, it loses its ability to flex. The rod has a piece of metal in there. Too much pressure is going to snap the rod at the ends where the metal is inserted. That is true, but I have a way around that. Second thing they're going to say is that if the rod is under immense pressure, the nail might bend, and because you've got a piece of steel, you can't just hope it's going to flex back naturally like a piece of wood or fiberglass would do. and you bend a piece of fiberglass, like this one, it comes right back. Even wood, to a certain extent, will do the same thing. Steel does not. You bend this, it's going to stay bent. However, I think that if I can't physically bend this nail doing that, and as you can see, I cannot, and I'm not a power lifter or a bodybuilder, but I'm very strong. If I can't bend that nail doing that, I don't think I'm going to bend it playing a fish properly either. So I think we'll be okay today. Now, we're going to cut the nail to length first. I'm just explaining what we're going to do. Then, before we insert this other end over it, we're going to do a couple of things. Number one, I want to give this nail a light coating of electrical tape. Then, we're going to lightly coat the tape in the fast dry liquid super glue. Then, on this end, we are going to build up a thicker layer with our electrical tape, coat it with the fast dry super glue, maybe then a layer of the gel super glue, and as we insert it into the rod, we're going to insert it into a preset mix of this gel super glue. And yes, I know you can see the brand. No, I'm not sponsored. I don't care. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to set that in there, let it set on one side with that layer of tape to insulate it so it's not metal on fiberglass. This side is going to have a thicker layer of tape and super glue. The super glue really lets the tape set in place. You know, over time the glue that's on tape, because yes, tape has glue on it, that's how it sticks, that can give out. The super glue is much stronger. So basically you're really just increasing the strength of the tape by many times. It's going to form a thicker layer to actually provide a natural taper that you have lost. So we're going to try to basically build this half of the rod back so we can reinsert it into the other half of the rod. And that is where the heat shrink tubing comes in. I am going to use that one of two ways or both. I'm either going to use it as the final layer around which we're going to put this nail, or once we insert it into this rod, if I feel like it just needs a little bit of that extra something to keep it secure, I will put it over the ferrule between the two rods, and it's going to turn our two-piece rod into a one-piece rod, because once you shrink one of these around your rod, you're not getting it back off unless you cut it off. But I'm okay with doing that. The sacrifice of not being able to pack a two-piece rod is well worth making for a rod that you found for free that was broken when you found it. Now, as you can probably suddenly hear on the audio, coming out of nowhere, somebody's mowing their lawn right outside that wall over there. So bear with us, it'll go away in a moment. First thing we did, we marked the part of the nail that we're going to cut with our marker here. Now this is easy because I'm just cutting off the tip. There you go. Now it's in focus. So we're going to lock it down in this vise. You will answer all of my questions. Now, a quick safety tip. You'll notice we're in a workshop here, so a couple of things. Always have your boots on. Don't ever use your tennis shoes. Second thing, always wear safety glasses. Now, because I don't have any today, I'm going to improvise. And what I've found, if you don't have any safety glasses, when you're working with a saw, a good substitute, just make yourself a blindfold. So if you don't want things in your eyes, so just cover your eyes like that. And then you get your saw. And you find your material. There you go. Alright, and that should be fine. You just have at it. When you're using any type of saw, start slow. Remember, it's not that hard, fast action where you're like, I gotta cut through it. It's those long, smooth strokes. That is actually what's going to make your saw most productive. Alright, as you can see, that end is done. I took this hammer while the screw was still in the vise. Just kind of tapped the end to make sure it wasn't pointy or jagged, because remember, it will come into contact with the interior of this fiberglass rod. You don't want that to cut your rod from the inside out. All right, now we're going to do both ends, so shorten the process up a little bit. Hey! All right, so both ends cut clean. Now this part right here could require the use of a measuring tape, but I think we have a bit of a shortcut today, so get that out of the way. I want to do about half and half for each end of the rod for the length of this screw. Now, I could measure it out, but because this one has the ribs going up all the way to the end, you know, for its original purpose, that would help the bolt grip the wood you set it in. But for today, what that's going to do, it's going to help me just keep in mind exactly where to stop the insert one way or the other, because the ribs go up halfway exactly, and then it just stops. So generally, you would measure it out, mark your spot, just get your marker for it. So just for the sake of example, because if I don't show you how to mark something with a marker, you're going to have no idea how to do it. You hear that?
Exactly.
All right, so what I'm gonna do, one end is almost exactly perfect in diameter to fit in the butt section of the rod, this end over here. It's almost perfect as it is, so I'm not adding a layer of tape to thicken the diameter, but I am gonna add just a little bit of tape over it, just so I don't have metal on fiberglass. Now the good thing about electrician's tape, the reason I prefer it to duct tape is it's very stretchy. You can stretch, gotta make sure it's on there good. Make sure it's on there good, and then you can stretch it out, and it thins that tape up a little bit. I also think it improves its grip in certain circumstances. So let's go all the way around, and just use your thumb and your forefinger, and as you twist it around an object, it is getting stretched. There we go. Just a little bit on the end, just like that. All right, look down here. All right, I've got 3 paper plates here. Now, if you can guess under which paper plate I have put the marble, no, I'm just kidding. I don't have 3 for any specific reason. I just need you to look at this one right here, because on this plate I have our super glue. Now, at this point in the process, an intelligent person might say, why don't you just take the nozzle that the super glue bottle comes with and just squirt it into the rod? But if you've ever worked with super glue, you already know the answer. It's because I've used it so many times, the super glue has hardened in the nozzle, and for the life of me, I can't get it out. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So don't waste your glue on a paper plate. Squeeze it out of the nozzle. So here's what we're gonna do. Because suddenly it just magically decided to start working, but that's fine. Just gonna squeeze some of this glue in here. Now keep in mind, the moment you do this, there is no going back. I hope you're happy with your decision on how to fix your fishing rod, because you're committed. Now, I have heard, and by heard I mean I saw it in a movie about werewolves, that super glue was invented in Vietnam for field surgeries to stick skin together. I researched that a little bit, and I think what I found was that it wasn't invented for that purpose so much as it was invented for a similar purpose for veterinary care. Ultimately, I don't know the truth. Guys, look that up for me. Who invented super glue and what was its original purpose? Was it medical? Was it Vietnam? Was it some other conflict? Was it for the guy who won't stop mowing his lawn? All right, it's looking pretty nice. I was actually able, because I'm stubborn, to take it back out, get some tape around it, and then get it back in, and that really does make it a lot sturdier as the glue sets. The only problem is now I've got super glue on my thumbs, and I can't unlock my phone with my thumbprint anymore. All right, what I'm doing now is I'm just building up layer by layer electrical tape around the nail to return that natural taper back to the rod. And you can see there, this is fiberglass, this is electrical tape. Now, here's a word of caution. Don't start at one end and just wrap all the way up and down. I'm actually gonna take a pair of scissors here, because I promised you I would use them. Gonna make this as even at the end as I can, because I don't want any little bulges or anything like this. A perfect cylinder. I like to go 1 cylinder worth of a layer at a time. Wrap straight around, like so. Pull it a little bit tight, just to make sure, just to make sure that the layer is compact. We will be giving this a nice little coat of super glue. All right, I've got 2 layers on. Now you can see, I mean, obviously there's a difference. It's not carbon fiber or fiberglass, but you can see it is starting to, oh my gosh, you can't even tell it was broken. All right, moment of truth. Let's see. I have not put glue on this yet. I can adjust this to any thickness I like so far. So let's see if it fits over. Good, 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 good. All right, a little bit of resistance near the end. I expect that, I hope that, because then remember, this will no longer be a 2-piece rod when I'm finished with it. It'll be a 1-piece rod. So a bit of resistance that I'll have to squeeze it over is good. Too much, no bueno. That's Spanish for not good. All right, got a pocket knife here. Actually, this is my favorite knife I've ever owned. It's a Smith & Wesson. I don't know what model number. I've tried to find it, and I can't find it again on their website, because I've had this knife for over 10 years. No rust, no malfunctions. Good as the day it was given to me. Graduation present. One of the best gifts I've ever received. Good knife. Anyway, I'm going to take this great knife and I'm just going to cut away a little bit of that extra tape that I feel is making this last layer a bit too thick. There we go, just little pieces like that. All right, that's the rod fit nicely over the new segment we've made in the middle. I have not put the glue on yet. I haven't put the heat shrinking tube on yet. I want to show you what it looks like before we do any of that. The rod seems to perform quite nicely. Now, obviously, we're going to test the heck out of this rod in just a minute when it's finished. But for now, look at that. Do you see that? I had to look for the break in the rod. For now, I think it's ready for some super glue. Now, this step has nothing to do with joining the two ends of the rod together yet. What I'm doing is I'm just going to apply a layer of glue over the top of this tape, coat it all the way around, and what that's going to do is just going to solidify this tape, keep it from coming unraveled, and really make it as if it is a piece of the rod. Wrap my finger in this athletic tape, which has a bit of a cloth-like quality to it, and I will use my finger to apply the glue all the way around the rod. And by all the way around the rod, I mean the section that we have just put tape on. There we go. So you can see what I'm doing, because what's the point of doing this on video if you can't see what I'm doing? It's like, oh, welcome to my YouTube video where we're fixing a broken rod. In typical fashion, I have bought heat shrink tubes that are too small to fit over the large end of the rod. So for now, it is going to remain a two-piece rod. So let's see if we can put this sucker together. Like a glove. A snug glove, like an O.J. Simpson glove. Now, because my rod is a little bit shorter here between these two rings than it should be, you can see the gap here is bigger than the gap here. What I'm going to do to compensate for that, because I don't want the line under stress coming down to the end of this ring, arcing back up to this one and then down to this one again. I'm just going to bend the eye back a little bit, and that will just help a tiny little bit, I think. I also need to get some pliers and straighten this one out. That's a project for another time. I mean, it's a bit crooked, but hey, this rod was free. I found it on a riverbank. It'll work for now. Now, let me address one thing I don't think I mentioned. A lot of people were hesitant to use those nails because, you know, obviously they bend, your rod is stuck with a bend in it, things like that. The other reason people are hesitant to use it is that the lack of flexibility in your rod. Remember, wood will bend back, carbon fiber will bend back, the metal won't, and that lack of flexibility, the lack of flexibility in your rod has the tendency to snap your rod. However, because this is a two-piece rod, this section right here was meant to be a little bit stiffer than normal anyway. You'll notice, because of the action of this rod, it's a medium-heavy rod. Let me get you where you can see this. If I bend the rod as if there's a fish on, you'll notice the natural action of this weight of rod, this medium-heavy rod, the arc in the rod stops right about at the end of where I put that nail in. So even under heavy pressure from a big fish, as long as I'm playing the fish correctly, not high sticking or trying to catch a fish that's overmatching this rod. I mean, come on, we're not catching tuna on this rod. I'm thinking carp and catfish and maybe bait fishing or jigging for small fish. I think it'll hold up just nice. All right, you know what you got to do next? We have to test this rod. Now, there's a couple of different ways we're going to test it. Seems to work quite nicely. Now, we're going to test this rod. We're going to test how it can cast, the type of pressure I can exert while tying the rod, or not the rod, having a reel with the line through the eyelets tied to a solid object, see what kind of force I can put on it, and of course, the only test that really matters, can it catch a fish? But we don't have time to do that all right now. There's a little puppy dog in there that I have to let out, walk around, play with a little bit. She's been in her room half the day. So you're gonna have to tune in for the second part to see, can my Frankenstein rod, held together with tape and super glue and nails, catch a fish? Well, you know what? No, it's not Frankenstein. It's Frankenstein's monster. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's Monster Rod from Universal Studios. Thanks for watching. Keep your eye out for the follow-up video. It'll be under the same title, only labeled as Part 2. I haven't titled this video yet on YouTube, so I don't know what that's going to be, but it will be the second part to this video. All right, for now, this rod is going to sit in the corner of my room until we can get some bait ready. I'm actually going to combine this video with the next video where we're going to make a new type of ground bait, and we'll try to use it to catch a carp or a catfish. And I will be using this rod. Tune in, videos coming soon, and until then, I'll see you guys later.